Dark Knight was released on July 18th, 2008, produced by Warner Brothers Pictures, Legendary Pictures, and Syncopy, which is the production company founded by Christopher Nolan and producer Emma Thomas. Christopher Nolan once again returns to direct, and this time he brought along his brother to collaborate in writing the screenplay based off a story by David S. Goyer, who wrote the Batman Begins story. The cinematography for the film was photographed by Wally Feister, and he did an outstanding job. This film looks beautiful. And the performances, especially by Heath Ledger, who unfortunately passed away before the premiere of the film, is without a doubt one of the greatest on screen performances ever captured on film. His acting was just outstanding, one of the best performances of all time. The transformation that he was able to undergo in order to portray the Joker is unprecedented. If you were to see Heath Ledger talk in an interview as a normal man and you see his performance as the Joker, it is remarkable how he was able to change his voice and change his demeanor and just totally change his entire persona, his entire personality, just to deliver this depiction of the Joker. It is truly moving and a truly inspirational performances for all aspiring actors. Heath Ledger, his performance is something magical. And the only thing that I could think of that comes even close to the aura and the mystique that is generated by his performance and his unfortunate passing is Brandon Lee's portrayal of the Crow in the movie The Crow. Unfortunately, Brandon Lee also died during the making of that film. So when I found out that Heath Ledger passed away before the premiere of The Dark Knight, it generated some of those same sentiments, some of those same feelings, some of that mystique and that aura. There was something in the air. You knew that the performance was going to be remarkable, even though you hadn't seen it. But you just knew that you were in for something special. And the death of Brandon Lee and the death of Heath Ledger just made the performance all that more captivating because you go in there with the mind state that this was their last performance ever. And just like Brandon Lee, this is Heath Ledger's best performance, hands down. This was it. This was his magnum opus. And it truly is a remarkable performance. And this interpretation of the Joker totally reinvented the character. And I think Heath Ledger was brilliant to take this route. And also, I thought Christopher Nolan was brilliant too because this was a collaboration. And the brilliance behind it was that they didn't try to recreate what Jack Nicholson did in Batman 1989. And I love Jack Nicholson's Joker. It's one of my favorites. But the thing with Jack Nicholson's Joker is that he knocked it out the park. That to me is the Joker from the comics. And it was such a wise decision for Christopher Nolan and Heath Ledger not to try to create the Joker from the comics. Instead, what they did was they reinvented the character and how he would be in real life. How would the Joker be in real life? Well, he is going to be this evil psychopath, this anarchist, this individual that has no reason, no logic, no fear, no morals, and no ethical limits. And I thought that was such a great reinvention, such a great approach to this character. And you can also see inspirations from some of those German expressionist villains from the old black and white silent films that I think that Christopher Nolan borrowed from. And Heath Ledger, man, this guy, he's totally submersed himself in this character, locked himself away for months on end in order to get into the mind state of this psychopath. And the approach was just brilliant. I mean, it was great. I'm so glad that they didn't try to do what Jack Nicholson did because when the film was about to premiere, Those were my concerns. When Heath Ledger was initially announced as the Joker, even myself included, I was totally dumbfounded. I thought it was a terrible decision. And the reason why is because your mind's eye is looking at things through the comic books. But once you saw that first picture of Heath Ledger as the Joker, with his scars on his cheeks and how they make that smile, you totally knew that this film is going in a completely different approach to this character. And that's when I knew, like, oh, okay, this isn't going to be the Joker from the comics. This is going to be something entirely different. And I appreciate that because now we have all these great interpretations of this awesome character, one of the best villains of all time. We have Jack Nicholson's interpretation. We have Heath Ledger's interpretation. We have Joaquin Phoenix's interpretation. And we have others as well. But those three are my favorites. But again, it's all about the interpretation of this villain. And Heath Ledger, he totally gave all of himself to this character. And he did such an outstanding job. His contributions to this film make it such a magical experience. And many people consider this film a masterpiece. And I really feel like this film is an important film. I mean, hey, this film was initiated into the National Film Registry, so this film is an important movie. However, in my opinion, this film does have its flaws. I don't think it's a flawless movie. And I think that there is no other movie out there that fits the terminology of a flawed masterpiece other than this one. Maybe Apocalypse Now, but this film truly is a flawed masterpiece. And I'm going to get into some of the things that I felt that I have misgivings about as far as the logistics behind some of the plot and things like that. But you just have to step back and just see what these filmmakers and actors were trying to achieve, and you really have to admire them. And that's why this film is important, and why this film is revered, and why I love this film. And even though I see 3 or 4 flaws in the story and in some logistical things, this film is a requisite. And it's not about comic book movies. This is an outstanding film. And this film truly stands apart from other comic book movies, quote unquote, because this film transcended the genre. See, if you were to change the name of all the characters, say you were to change the names of Bruce Wayne and the Joker, and you stripped away the costumes and you just made these characters just Joe and Mo, but you had the same plot and you took away all the action and all that stuff, you would still have an outstanding film filled with emotion and filled with drama and suspense and thrills. So that's why this film transcended the genre, because this movie isn't just a comic book movie. It's a crime thriller. And that totally makes sense because Christopher Nolan drew a lot of inspiration from Michael Mann's movie Heat, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And Michael Mann is one of my favorite directors. So for him to say that and to draw inspiration from that film and that director, that's so awesome, especially for a comic book movie. And this film carries on the tradition that Batman Begins did. Because Batman Begins also was a groundbreaking film for the comic book genre in the way that it took the material very seriously. And this film, The Dark Knight, carries on that tradition, and I want to say it multiplies it exponentially. So this film truly is special, and I love Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Now, I absolutely love the opening act to this film. It totally feels like something out of a heist film or a crime genre film, such as Michael Mann's Heat or Catherine Bigelow's Point Break. Most especially Point Break, because you have the the henchman, the Joker's henchman, doing this bank heist wearing the mask, similar to how the antagonists in Point Break were wearing the mask of the presidents. And I just love the whole setup here. I love the compositions that Christopher Nolan uses, how he utilizes IMAX film to get these super wide shots. You're able to capture so much visual information with the IMAX film format, and it looks beautiful. And the music by Hans Zimmer, I could be a little indifferent to. I'm not the biggest Hans Zimmer fan when it comes to his music for Batman, for the Batman trilogy, but it works in some of the scenes. It works very well, and it generates suspense in such an outstanding way. And I really love the way this bank heist goes and how we're setting up the plot. And again, I really feel like Christopher Nolan draws a lot of inspiration from Michael Mann. If you've ever seen Michael Mann's films, his heist films especially, such as Thief and Heat and maybe Public Enemies to a lesser extent, but his films, they have this certain technical prowess, for lack of a better word, or like there's this savvy when it comes to the technical aspects of how the criminals are breaking into these banks, and the way this one henchman tries to break into the bank vault. I mean, it just feels real. Again, Christopher Nolan does an outstanding job at creating this world of Batman that feels like it's really happening. Like, if we were to compare Christopher Nolan's Batman films to Tim Burton's Batman films feel fantasy. They feel like something out of the comic books. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. But Christopher Nolan's films, they feel like Batman is basically going on right outside your window right now. Like, this is happening right now at the bank down the street. So he does an outstanding job at generating this feeling like this is a real world scenario that's going down. And again, I love the way this bank heist is filmed. Love the way all of Joker's henchmen bust in to basically just rob this bank that's basically a front for the mafia's money. So basically, this bank is holding the mafioso's money. It's holding all the crime lords' money. The Joker's going in, causing a bunch of ruckus. He's trying to stir the pot up. And that's why this one guy who's a representative of the mob busts out the shotgun and is basically like, do you know who you're robbing? You don't know who you're dealing with. The Joker, he could care less. And this right here was such an outstanding reveal for Heath Ledger's Joker character when he pulls off that mask and he says, I believe if it doesn't kill you, it should only make you stranger, or something along those lines. And he puts the grenade in his mouth and it turns out to be a dud. Such a great way to introduce the strangeness of the character, and at the same time this morbidity. The Joker, when he's on screen, you really feel his presence, and at the same time, simultaneously, when he's not on the screen, you still feel his presence. His actions loom over everything, and not only was the performance a contribution to that, but also just the way this character is written. It was outstanding. The way this character is written, his presence is felt on the screen even when he's not there physically. He looms like a shadow over the actions of all the other characters, and it really makes you fear on behalf of the characters. You fear for them because once the Joker shows up, you feel uneasy about it because there's this unpredictability to his madness, and you have no idea what's going to happen. And that's why when he's off screen, you're scared because he's out there somewhere and he's going to pop up. I mean, it's like Jason Voorhees, but not on some crazy, senseless horror film stuff. Like, this is some really, really psychologically thrilling stuff right here. The suspense did an outstanding job. It kind of almost reminds me of how Hannibal Lecter was in Silence of the Lambs. Like, that kind of vibe. It's done so well. And they do a really good job at depicting the Joker's madness and his pathology and just how just ruthless he is, like the way he's killing his own henchmen without even a second thought. I mean, and at the same time, it's comical. The way he kills his henchmen without even looking at him, it's just like it's swatting a fly. It's comical and disturbing at the same time. Great stuff right here. Now, there's one thing here that really makes me scratch my head as far as logistics. And you could say this is a nitpick, but it's always bothered me since day one when this film debuted. Okay, so the Joker, he steals the mob's money from this bank. Then the school bus shows up, and he's going to utilize this school bus as a way to escape, right? By blending in with other school buses. Okay, I get it. Now, my problem is when the Joker pulls out of the bank, there's this huge hole in the bank because the bus crashed into the bank, okay? He pulls out of the hole and then he goes into like this row of other buses, right? And there's this gap, this perfectly synchronized timed opening in the line of buses that is just so happens to be passing in front of the bank. Okay, fine. This would work if all the other buses were being driven by some of Joker's henchmen. Maybe he has walkie-talkies and it's all synchronized and it's all planned. But on the soundtrack, on the ADR or whatever, on the audio, you hear school children. And that's like, I'm like, wait a minute. Is this really like some random occurrence that there just so happened to be school buses passing in front of the bank and the Joker just knew to pull up in front of it? Or is this, like I stated, are these bus drivers part of Joker's entourage? Are they the Joker's henchmen and that they steal buses filled with children? And if so, what the hell happened after this? I mean, again, this could be a nitpick, but it's just something that always bothered me because I really felt like a big, huh? Like, wait a minute. The soundtrack of hearing the school children really threw me off because it would have made sense if they were just empty school buses being driven by the Joker's henchmen. But since we have actual children on these buses, it just leaves me wondering what the hell happened, what the hell's going on. I feel like we really could have used a scene where the Joker got on the walkie talkie and communicated with the henchmen driving the buses, and maybe we saw the school children, and it was part of a setup to blend in with the rest of traffic in Gotham City and to make the getaway look more feasible, more credible, whatever. I really felt like there needed to be a little bit more detail for me to believe this escape scenario. Again, it's kind of a nitpick, but it's just something that has always bothered me, but it doesn't take away from the film at all. Now, I really enjoyed Batman's introduction to this film and the way this scene sets up the notion that there are copycats, there are Batman copycats out there causing trouble, not only for Gotham City, but for Batman's reputation. And this totally feels like something that is inspired from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, because the same thing happened in that graphic novel, and it's one of the probably the best Batman graphic novel ever created, in my opinion, and that's its reputation literally among the comic book community. But anyway, in that graphic novel, Batman returns out of retirement and he inspires criminals and punks and gangbangers and all this stuff to dress up as Batman. So basically, they want to treat Batman almost like he's the leader of a gang and they want to go out there and fight crime. But the way that they do it is very dirty and they do it violently. And they do it in a way that isn't really justified. It's not in the name of justice. I mean, the way they do it, it's in the name of revenge and anger and bitterness and all that. And that kind of ties into Batman's mind state in the graphic novel. But here, I really enjoy this because you see that these Batman copycats are using guns. They're coming out and they're just basically trying to do what Batman is doing. But Batman has a problem with this. And it kind of introduces this conundrum as far as ethics and morality. Why is it okay for Batman to be a vigilante but not these other guys? And I really love that because it's small. It's not a big aspect of this film that's going to be explored, but I love the little nuance how it introduces the moral ambiguity and the dilemma as far as ethics, the ethical dilemmas in regards to being a vigilante. And it just gives you food for thought, and I really appreciate it. And the way that Batman is introduced here was great. He comes in and he shows his fighting abilities. He does a good job. We got to see some cool gadgets and some great action. It was an outstanding way to introduce the Batman character, and we even get this little glimpse of Scarecrow, one of the main villains from the first Batman film, and we see that he's finally getting captured after running around causing trouble since the first Batman film in this trilogy, Batman Begins. So that was really cool. So after this, we're introduced to some of the motivation for the protagonist, namely Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent. And that's just basically to take down the mob by hitting them where it hurts, which is their pockets, which means messing with their money. And at the same time, the Joker is also trying to mess with the mob's money, but his motivations are different. He's doing this so he can get to Batman and so he can cause chaos and basically tear Gotham City apart in just one chaotic mess. Now, I just want to say Aaron Eckhart's performance as Harvey Dent and Two-Face was outstanding. It's the best version of Harvey Dent ever put on screen. Way better than Tommy Lee Jones's depiction in Batman Forever. I really, really thought that they nailed Harvey Dent and Two-Face's duality right here. My only complaint was that I wish it could have been longer. I wish this film was 3.5 hours so we could have gotten more Two-Face. But for what it's worth, this film did an outstanding job. You know, I see a lot of inspiration for this film taken from the graphic novel The Long Halloween, which was also about how the rogues gallery for the Batman villains cause all this chaos. And during all this chaos, we see this transition of Harvey Dent turn into Two-Face and how the events led to that. So I really feel that vibe from The Long Halloween when I watch The Dark Knight. But again, Aaron Eckhart did an outstanding job as Harvey Dent. And he really did have to almost play two different characters. I mean, that's what Two-Face's character is. You have to play two characters, and that's why you have to get an actor that not only knows how to play Harvey Dent, but also knows how to play Two-Face. And Aaron Eckhart did an outstanding job with that. And that was my huge problem with Tommy Lee Jones's version of Two-Face in Batman Forever. We didn't get to see Harvey Dent. All we got to see was crazy, insane Two-Face. And even then, I thought his version or his interpretation was way over the top. So I really appreciate Aaron Eckhart's depiction of Two-Face because it feels more true to the character that I read in the comics and experienced in the old school Batman animated series from the 1990s. And in regards to Gary Oldman's depiction of Commissioner Gordon, what can be said that hasn't been said about Gary Oldman? The guy is a great actor. No matter what he does, he knocks it out the park. Totally feels like I'm reading the Commissioner Gordon from the comic books. Now, let's talk about Maggie Gyllenhaal's version of Rachel Dawes. I like Maggie Gyllenhaal's version of Rachel Dawes way more than the version we got in Batman Begins, which was played by Katie Holmes. I thought Katie Holmes' version was so irritating and she just made me want to pull my hair out. But here, this version of Rachel is way more accessible. She's way more likable. She's way more relatable. She's not on some high horse as far as morality. She kind of has this genuine, sincere concern for how Harvey Dent is approaching his work, and she cares for his safety, but she's not coming across all preachy like Katie Holmes' version was. I mean, the way she was lecturing and taking this moral high ground over Bruce Wayne when he felt like he wanted to kill the murderer of his parents, and the way she thought that was so wrong and she slapped him in the face, I really, really despised her character in that film, even though she apologized at the end. But it was just her whole demeanor was just irritating to me. I didn't like her at all. But here, yes, she's more relatable. She's more likable. She's more accessible. She feels less preachy, and I like this version way more. In fact, when Bruce Wayne feels this emptiness inside of him because Rachel Dawes dies because of the Joker's schemes, I feel it now because I liked Rachel in this movie. I don't think if Katie Holmes was in this film and she was acting the same way she was and Batman Begins and then she died, I don't think I would have felt empathetic towards Bruce Wayne. I think I would have been like, thank God that annoying bitch is dead. Like, I really feel like I would have felt that way if we had Katie Holmes' version of the character in this film. Now, in regards to the other supporting cast in this film, the great actors Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman. I mean, what can be said about these two actors that hasn't been said before? They're masterclass actors. Their performances are always outstanding, even if it's in the supportive capacity. They still leave such a remarkable contribution to this film. Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. I love this. I love that scene where Bruce Wayne asked him to use that technology. That basically it's like sonar technology, but it's magnified exponentially, and he can essentially spy on anybody in Gotham that he desires. And he asked Morgan Freeman's character to use this in order to find the Joker, and then Fox replies that this is morally and ethically wrong. I can't do this, and no one should have this power. Those kind of things I really love about his character. I really do. But at the same time, again, it introduces that moral ambiguity because he has to use this technology in order to capture this evil guy. He has to stop this evil madman, the Joker. And this is the only way that he could possibly do it. So it's like using evil to catch evil, I guess, for lack of a better term, or using fire to fight fire. And again, it introduces all those moral conundrums and these ethical dilemmas, and it just gives you food for thought. And I love how Morgan Freeman's character plays a pivotal role in those contemplations that our protagonist has to go through. Now, Michael Caine's Alfred, I love it, man, because he totally plays this father figure-like character for Bruce Wayne, and he has one of the best lines in the entire movie. I love that exchange between Alfred and Bruce Wayne when Bruce Wayne basically asks him why the Joker is basically just he's a chaotic madman. It seems like he has no rhyme and reason for anything. And he asks him about his time in the war. And Michael Caine gives him this anecdote. He gives him this story about how these, I guess you want to say, these rebels or guerrillas or mercenaries were supposedly after these gems, but then they ended up not even taking the gems, and it was just all about the slaughter. And then he has that perfect line. I mean, that's probably not anywhere near as close to how the actual anecdote goes. This is just me trying to summarize off memory, and it's not accurate at all. But the line that he says is just so powerful when he says, "Some people just want to watch the world burn." And I love that line because it's true. Sometimes protagonists, sometimes good people want to know why people commit evil. What is the reason? Sometimes people, they don't have a rhyme and reason. Sometimes they're so far gone that they just want to watch the world burn. They're so broken and they're so hurt, they're so damaged that they no longer care. There is no end game. The only end game is to just cause as much destruction as possible, to inflict as much pain and destruction as possible, to basically to dish out the equal pain that they receive. It's such a great line. I love it. Now, the scene where Lau reveals to the mob bosses that he basically took their money for their benefits because basically the police and Batman are working together to seize their cash in order to basically get them all arrested and charged for crimes. And he just tries to prove to the crime bosses that he's one step ahead of the game by taking their money from them and basically protecting their cash, because everyone is well aware that Batman and the police, namely Commissioner Gordon, are working together to basically get the crime bosses prosecuted, to just end their reign on their criminal reign in Gotham, right? So here we have this sequence where the Joker reveals himself to the mob bosses by interrupting their meeting and basically offering to kill Batman for literally half of all the money that the mob has, which is in Lau's possession. So the mob bosses, they all laugh in his face. They dismiss the Joker as just a corny clown. He's just a crazy lunatic, not to be taken seriously. And he shows otherwise, that he is to be taken seriously and that he's ruthless, right? Now, I love Heath Ledger's acting in this sequence. There's not a single problem that I have with it. However, I know a lot of people love this scene. When I saw it in the theater, people were cheering and all this stuff, but there's something in this sequence that just doesn't sit well with me as far as the direction. Christopher Nolan is a great director, and this is why I'm going to levy some criticism about his directing, because I feel he could do better. He's one of the best directors. He's probably the best director out of this new school of directors. Definitely one of the best directors of the 21st century, right? But when he does this scene, okay, so the Joker comes in, the mob bosses dismiss him as some lunatic. One of the henchmen of the mob bosses tries to basically apprehend them. The Joker takes the time to stab a pencil into the table. Then when the guy tries to apprehend them, he uses his head. He basically stabs his own head with the pencil, right? Or in his eye. And that's all fine and dandy. However, I just feel like the sequence was I don't know, it just didn't make sense to me. Okay? This is how the sequence should have gone down. The Joker goes in there. They say, "Get this guy out of here." The Joker stabs the pencil in the desk, right? The guy tries to apprehend them. The Joker stabs him in the eye with the pencil. And then everybody pulls their guns out because one of their men just got murdered. And then the Joker reveals the grenades. Like, hey, you better listen to me, right? But that's not what happened. What happened was, after the Joker stabbed the guy in the eye with the pencil, nobody does nothing. There's no outrage. There's no pulling of the guns out. And to me, I was just always like, well, wait a minute. If somebody stabbed one of my henchmen, one of my men in the eye, the first thing you're going to do is just try to take the guy out that did that. And basically, nobody does that. And I always felt like the way this scene was conceived, or this specific moment in the scene, was done poorly. I'm just going to come out and say it was done poorly. And I know everybody loves this scene, but I'm sorry. Heath Ledger's acting was outstanding. That's not the problem here. He did everything impeccably. The problem here is the way it was conceived. And every time I see this scene, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy the fact that after the Joker stabs the guy in the eye with the pencil, everybody, all the mob bosses, they just, oh, well, let's hear what he has to say. Like nobody, there's no outrage. There's nothing. There's outrage when the Joker cracks his little jokes and stuff like that. And then the black dude that plays Spawn in the old movie, he gets all upset when the Joker cracks a joke at him and makes fun of him. But nobody got mad when the guy got killed, when the henchman got killed. Like I said, when that dude got stabbed in the eye with the pencil, everyone should have pulled their guns out, and then the Joker showed the grenades in his coat and been like, y'all better listen to me, and then everybody listens. But instead, the everything was done wrong. The Joker showed the grenades after the guys were threatened because he was hurling insults at them, not because he killed one of them. I mean, is anybody out there feeling me on this? I mean, I always felt like this scene was poorly conceived, or at least this aspect of the scene, this point in the scene when he stabs the dude in the eye with the pencil. And I don't feel like I'm nitpicking here, because every time I see this scene, I'm just like, oh man, Heath Ledger's acting is so good, but this doesn't make sense, man. If I was in that room and you were to stab my homie in the eye with a pencil, I'm going to pull out my gun and be like, I'm going to shoot you until you otherwise show me that you have some kind of threat up your sleeve, which is those grenades. And man, every time I see this scene, it's like I love it and it irritates me at the same time. And I just have to come out and say that. But otherwise, this scene is great. Heath Ledger does an outstanding job. I love his laugh. That laugh he has when he walks into the room. It's Heath Ledger's voice. The voice that he conceived for this interpretation of the Joker is just eerie as hell, man. Does a great job. Love his costume. Love the makeup of the scars. Everything, the hair. Totally reinventing the character. His scene is so morbid and eerie and comical at the same time. I mean, it's hard to do that. To be eerie, morbid, and comical simultaneously. This scene, other than that stabbing in the eye part, was great. But, you know, it should have been impeccable because it's Christopher Nolan. And Christopher Nolan is impeccable. I mean, that's, to me, he has that capacity. I mean, if you look at his other films, Memento, Batman Begins, Interstellar, the guy he knows how to be intellectually calculated with the logistics of filmmaking, and I feel like this scene could have been better conceived as far as the stabbing in the eye part. Now, in the sequence where Michael White's character, and that's the gentleman that played Spawn, when this character offers X amount of dollars to anyone that could capture the Joker, dead or alive, and then you have the Joker's goons bringing him Joker, pretending that the Joker's dead, and the Joker's basically just using that as an opportunity to kill this guy, right? To kill Michael White's character. Now, this was a real creepy scene. Again, Heath Ledger's acting is impeccable, nothing wrong here, but there's just some things with the conception, with the way the scene is conceived, that I just feel like could have been done better. Okay, so I love the way the Joker, every time he talks about his father and the origin of his scars. It just changes. I love it because it's illustrating the instability of the character. Basically, the guy's a pathological liar, right? His mind is just warped, and it keeps his origin a mystery. So it's at the same time, it's keeping his origin a mystery, and it's also illustrating his madness, right? I love that. And I love how he talks about how he got the scars, they're self inflicted, and all that, right? So he puts the knife, or it looks like he's putting the knife to Michael White's mouth, to his cheeks. Like he's threatening him, like he's going to he's going to do to Michael White's character what he did to himself, right? Okay, I get it, right? His henchmen are watching. Michael White's henchmen are watching the Joker threaten him, go into this insane anecdote about his father, or I don't know if it was his wife, which one, because the story changes. But anyway, he's telling him this story. He's inferring that he's going to slice his cheeks open. Okay, I get it, right? Then the camera cuts away. You hear Hans Zimmer's score infer that something awful happened. So you think that Michael White's cheek just got slashed open, right? And then Michael White's character falls to the ground like he's dead, right? And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If you were to slice my cheek open, that wouldn't kill me. That would just hurt like hell. So I'm thinking, well, shouldn't the scene had gone like this? The Joker slices the dude's cheek open, right? And then Michael White's character is just like, he's screaming in agony. And then whatever. The Joker could do whatever he wants to him. Finish him off, slice his throat, whatever. Or maybe the Joker didn't cut his cheek at all. Maybe it was a fake out. He wasn't going to slice his cheek at all. Instead he went to the throat. Either way, I just feel like there's something there that wasn't shown to me. And it's kind of similar to the stabbing the dude in the eye with the pencil thing. It's like the scene was conceived poorly. The idea is totally right? And the performance is impeccable. But the execution just leaves me confused and wanting more and just scratching my head. No matter how good the performance is. It's like I love the scene, but at the same time, I see a flaw in it. So, again, just some criticism I got. I love the movie, nevertheless, but I feel like this scene could have been better executed. It could have been better conceived on the director's part. Now, in regards to all the sequences that take place in China and Hong Kong, where the Batman is going to basically kidnap Lau's character, or capture Lau's character rather, and bring him back to Gotham so that they could use him to basically as leverage against the mob bosses, using his testimony in order to arrest a whole bunch of them, using the RICO guidelines, whatever. All that stuff in Hong Kong was great, man. I mean, that was such an outstanding action sequence when the Batman used that CIA op in order to escape, using the basically having the plane just as a grappling hook, just to basically just, I guess you want to say, bungee cord him and Lau away as the plane goes. And that was just awesome, man. Everything in that whole sequence was just awesome, especially the cinematography, the IMAX, the way that these widescreen shots that show you Hong Kong, it just looks massive, and just the nighttime photography, the action, it was great. Loved it. Loved it. This film has some of the best action sequences I've ever seen. I mean, it's right up there with Heat, Michael Mann's Heat, the shootout in downtown LA after the bank robbery, and it's right up there with Terminator 2, the sequence at the Cyberdyne building, all the way to from the escape to the factory at the very end. I mean, literally, this film is in my top 5 as far as action sequences, and we're gonna get into that because The awesome action sequence that this film has is definitely that scene where the Joker is trying to get to Harvey Dent, and you all know what I'm talking about. Slaughter is the best medicine. Now, as a result of the Batman capturing Lau and bringing him back to Gotham, they basically use Lau's testimony in order to use the RICO statutes in order to prosecute a whole bunch of the mob families and crime families and their henchmen and all their various associates. Now, as a result of this, the mob bosses, decide to accept the Joker's offer, which is to give them half their money in order to take out Batman. And in order to do so, the Joker starts to take out all these high profile targets in Gotham, judges, the commissioner, and other targets until the Batman unmasks himself and basically reveals his identity. Now, this little plot point brings about some really great scenes. We get some really disturbing footage from the Joker as he abducts one of these Batman copycats, and it looks like he's torturing him, and that's how he announces that he wants Batman to basically unmask himself. And it was really disturbing, and I love the way that they used this found home video footage type of technique in order to reveal this. It worked really well. It was a really disturbing scene. It was excellent. And also, we get the scene where the Joker crashes Bruce Wayne's Harvey Dent fundraising project, and that was another outstanding performance from Heath Ledger. There was comedy, there was some disturbing, morbid stuff in there. It's just a great eclectic mix of all these different emotions and themes, and just it just gives me chills, man, just watching Heath Ledger do his work as the Joker. And I love how he basically reiterates a completely different scenario as to how he got the origin of his scars to the older guy that tried to challenge him at the party. And also, it was such a great laugh when the Joker held Rachel out the window, and then Batman is like, "Let her go," and he says, "Very poor choice of words," and he just drops her and lets her go. But ultimately, the Batman saves her. All that stuff was great. Now, we find out soon after this that Commissioner Gordon is going to be the Joker's next target, and there's a staged assassination on part of James Gordon. So, James Gordon, he wears a vest, he pretends that he's killed through the Joker's assassination attempt, and as a result of this, Harvey Dent, he starts to walk over to the dark side, for lack of a better term. He starts to compromise his moral code in order to find out what the hell is going on. And this is exemplified when he basically holds a gun to one of the Joker's henchmen's head and flips the coin, and he basically just threatens his life. Tell me what I want or else. And Batman is able to intervene and basically shake some sense into Harvey Dent and to inform him and advise him that if anyone saw him doing this, everything they worked for would be destroyed, especially his reputation as a moral man, as a man with a moral code who's different than all the criminals that he is prosecuting. And Bruce Wayne, he admires Harvey Dent very much because Harvey Dent is able to do what he can't do. Even though Bruce Wayne has all the money in the world and he has all the technology and he has all the fighting techniques, he can't do what Harvey Dent did, which was prosecute so many criminals all at once and to take off all these criminals, take them off the streets in one quick maneuver, which was seen through the RICO statutes prosecution thing. And yeah, Batman admires Harvey Dent. So for him to see Harvey Dent compromise his moral code, it's very concerning for him, for lack of a better term. So we're starting to see here that Harvey Dent is starting to he's starting to break. And this is a foreshadowing of what's to come once he becomes Two-Face and once he loses his love interest, which is Rachel. Now, after this, Harvey Dent confesses to being Batman, and the reason why he does this is to lure the Joker out, and it works. And this leads us to one of the greatest action sequences in the history of cinema, in my opinion. This action sequence where the police are transporting Harvey Dent to another prison and where the Joker and his henchmen try to take Harvey Dent out or try to take out the armored vehicle so that they can kidnap or capture Harvey Dent is just mind blowing. And one of the best things about this sequence is that Hans Zimmer chose not to be heavy handed with the music. In fact, there's very little music in this sequence, and this makes the sequence better because I'm not distracted by the soundtrack. It feels like I'm really there. All I'm hearing are the bullets. All I'm hearing are the cars, are the crashes. This scene is just remarkable, especially the way it's photographed. The cinematography is beautiful. Once again, Christopher Nolan utilizes the IMAX film format to get these super wide shots, and he's able to just capture so much visual information on the screen. This sequence is beautiful. I love it. And when Batman shows up and then he uses his Batmobile and the Bat motorcycle, it's just remarkable stuff right here. I love the action sequences. I love how the Joker shows up in this big 18-wheeler, and it initially said laughter is the best medicine, and he just spray paints an S before the L, and you get slaughter is the best medicine. That is 100% something that the Joker would definitely do, and it's hilarious. Heath Ledger, once again, does an outstanding job. Another home run. And it's impressive because here it's not so much acting. He is actually participating in an action sequence and he does an outstanding job. So not only does it illustrate his acting abilities, but also how he engages in action sequences. And another thing that I love about this action sequence is that there's this little nod, a little tribute to Batman 1989, where you have the Joker willingly accept Batman's kamikaze move right into him. In this film, it's the Bat motorcycle, but in the 1989 Batman film, it was Batman and the Bat plane shooting missiles at the Joker, and the Joker was just welcoming all the destruction with open arms, and that's what this sequence reminds me of. And I love that. I love that this film is paying tribute to the Joker, to that previous reiteration of the Joker, that previous interpretation. I love that. And again, this action sequence, I just love seeing this. I could watch this action sequence hundreds of times and never get tired of it. This action sequence alone is reason enough to purchase this film in 4K because you want to see this thing in the best resolution possible. It's that good. So this sequence ends with the Joker being captured by Commissioner Gordon. He's not dead. It was all a trick just to lure the Joker out and capture him. So this was a collaborative effort between Gordon, Dent, and Batman, and it worked. Or so they thought, because the Joker getting captured was, again, part of his scheme. And this leads us to an outstanding scene as far as acting between Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. Again, Heath Ledger delivers such an outstanding performance here in the interrogation sequence where he reveals that Rachel has been kidnapped and Harvey Dent have been kidnapped, and he is giving our protagonist a choice. They have to choose between the two. One is going to die. And here, this scene truly illustrates I want to say, the pinnacle of escalation. So all throughout this film, there's this theme of escalation, this impending sense of doom that looms over everything because of the Joker. And here we have the escalation just cranked up to level 1000. And you really feel this huge sense of urgency, this impending doom. And it's reached its highest point, its climax here. And you can see that Batman is beginning to break. He's slamming the Joker's head against the glass. He's physically assaulting him. You could see him slightly compromising his moral code here. And it's really, really intense stuff. And Hans Zimmer's music, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Hans Zimmer, but this little theme, for lack of a better word, because I wouldn't use the word theme, but I can't really convey a word right now, or I just want to say maybe the mood that he's trying to convey through the sound of the score. And it's like this gradual cranking up, this distorted violin kind of sound, and it really contributes to that feeling like things have escalated beyond control. And it's such a powerful sequence. And ultimately, Commissioner Gordon and Batman are not in time to save Rachel. Rachel dies, and this is going to have huge repercussions on the events to come in this film, especially on Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent is terribly burnt in this tragic incident. His face gets doused with gasoline, and then explosion from the fire practically melts half his face off, and this is how he becomes Two-Face. So Batman is devastated because he couldn't save his childhood friend Rachel Dawes, whom he secretly loved. He had romantic feelings for her, and he was very hopeful that maybe one day they could be together. And Harvey Dent is devastated because the love of his life is dead. And Gordon, he feels like he may have let his comrades down, and there's going to be repercussions for this later on in the film when Harvey Dent blames Commissioner Gordon for Rachel Dawes' death, and he basically threatens the lives of his family because of that. So yes, a lot of powerful stuff goes down in these sequences. Again, the theme of escalation, not feeling in control, no matter what Batman does, because Batman and Joker represent the complete opposite sides of what's going on here. They're polar opposites. Batman's trying to control everything, and the Joker represents chaos. And they're two sides of the same coin. They're both quote-unquote freaks. And that's why I love Joker when he says, he says, no, I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? And that right there is totally like something the Joker would say from the comic books. This is great writing right here. You totally feel like David S. Goyer knows what he's talking about when he wrote this story, because this is straight up the chemistry that Batman and the Joker have had for decades. So that line right there totally made me feel like this story is in the perfect hands with David S. Goyer. David S. Goyer reads the comics. You know he does. Just with that line right there. Now, despite the greatness of this sequence, there is one thing that really bothers me and that I have to bring up, and it always just gets under my skin because it's just another time where Christopher Nolan overlooks some of the logistics in regards to the execution of the scene. And the scene in particular that I'm speaking about is how Joker escapes from police captivity. So basically, Jim Gordon and Batman are off to save Rachel and Harvey Dent. Now, during this pursuit, the Joker asked to use the telephone to make a phone call. And the way that he does this is that he basically puts a piece of broken glass to the police officer that was looking over him. He puts it to this guy's throat, and he's able to threaten his life in order to use the phone, and then they give him the phone, and then he calls another prisoner, one of his goons, one of the Joker's henchmen, who was captured in a cell. I presume maybe in the next building over or in the same building, but a couple of rooms down, something like that. So this guy, the Joker's henchman, he has a phone basically inside his stomach or something like that, right? And the phone is wired explosive. So the Joker calls this dude, and the dude essentially explodes, right? And it's an explosion, and in the confusion, the Joker escapes. Now, my problem with this part of the sequence is that the explosion, it's a small explosion, right? It's not this fireball that just destroys the entire police department. It doesn't destroy the police headquarters. It's not this huge explosion that brings the building down, in other words. Rather, it's this kind of small explosion that has a lot of impact. And the thing that bothers me is that the Joker, he's basically, before he makes that phone call and sets the bomb off, he's in this room filled with dozens upon dozens of police officers. I mean, the place is just filled with police officers, right? So he makes the phone call, the bomb goes off, and the area that he's in has no fire damage. There's no fires, there's no smoke, nothing is burnt. So basically, it's all impact, right? Impact from the blast that just shook everybody up. But the Joker has all this time to basically take care of Lau. Presumably, he kidnaps Lau at gunpoint or something like that. The Joker has all this time to escape and all that. And he's able to, I guess, force Lau at gunpoint to drive the police car that he escapes in. Now, my problem is that since there was no fire damage, there was no huge explosion, I just want to know what happened to all those police officers. I mean, they obviously didn't blow up. They obviously didn't get hurt. They obviously didn't get damaged. There was no fire damage. There was no fireball. That area that the Joker was in had virtually no damage. The only damage was like shattered glass and just impact from the explosion. So are you telling me that explosion basically knocked everybody on their ass and they got knocked out except for the Joker, and that was his plan all along? He knew, in other words, that the other officers in that room would just basically get knocked out by the explosion, and that he wouldn't, and he would be able to escape. Again, for me, it's just poor execution and just poor calculation of the logistics of the scene. You know what I mean? I feel like maybe there should have been fire damage, and maybe the Joker should have gotten a little damaged himself and was able to escape. I don't know, something there just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think this is nitpicking at all, because for me, every time I see the scene, I just don't buy the fact that he was able to escape like that. I get what Christopher Nolan and the writer David S. Goyer and his brother Jonathan Nolan were trying to do. I get it. The Joker was just trying to create some chaos, and in the middle of the chaos, he was going to kill Lau and escape. It's just the execution makes very little sense to me. Using this explosion that didn't cause any damage, didn't cause any fire damage, didn't cause any physical damage to the officers. I just don't see it. And I don't know where the police officers went to. If you see the Joker when he's going up to Lau, it's like there's nobody there. There's nobody. It's like the police department is completely abandoned. We don't see any knocked out police officers. We don't see killed police officers. We don't see the building on fire. We don't see anything. All we see is the Joker by himself and then escaping. And I just scratch my head every time. I just don't get how he was able to escape like that. I get the idea, but I just don't buy the execution. So that's a problem that I have with that sequence, despite, everything before it being outstanding. Now, I do want to talk about how Rachel Dawes basically told Alfred that she had no intention of ever being with Bruce Wayne in a romantic fashion, that her heart basically belonged to Harvey Dent, and how she told Alfred this, and Alfred was basically going to give Bruce Wayne a letter from Rachel admitting so. And when Alfred saw how devastated Bruce Wayne was because of what happened to Rachel, because of her death, he chose not to give her that letter. And when this film ended, and when I initially saw it back in the day, I really was concerned because I wanted to know if there was going to be repercussions, because Alfred essentially committed a lie of omission. He didn't tell Bruce Wayne something really important. And yes, we get to see the outcome of that action in the next film, The Dark Knight Rises. And it's just, again, there's a lot of gray in this film, a lot of moral ambiguity, a lot of contemplation of in regards to ethics and what is the right thing to do. And we see this again later in the film when essentially Jim Gordon and Batman lie to Gotham and say that Harvey Dent was a hero despite him turning into Two-Face and killing numerous people. Now, I thought the scene where we see Harvey Dent awaken out of the trauma of his injuries, and where he realizes that Rachel is dead and that he is now permanently mutilated, I thought it was great. And just his scream, and how his scream is muted. It's almost like Godfather 3 when Michael Corleone's daughter is dead and he screams, and rather than hearing the scream, it's muted. And just seeing his reaction and not being able to hear the scream just leaves a lot to the imagination in regards to how the audience can imagine how he's feeling, how devastated he's feeling. Imagine the pain, the unbearable pain that Harvey Dent is going through. I thought that was a remarkable artistic choice right there, to mute out his scream when he finally realizes that Rachel, the love of his life, is dead, and that his face is permanently mutilated, and that he is a changed man. He is no longer Harvey Dent. He is Two-Face. And that scene when Two-Face reveals his mutilated face to Gordon and how he vows vengeance against him, that was such a powerful scene. Such an epic transformation in Aaron Eckhart's performance, going from Harvey Dent to Two-Face. He did a wonderful job right there. And I love the origin behind him getting that name, Two-Face. How basically all the police officers used to call Harvey Dent Two-Face behind his back when he used to work at Internal Affairs and was investigating the police department for corruption. I love that. That was such a great exchange and well written dialogue. Now, after this, we get some more epic performances from Heath Ledger. One of my favorite scenes out of the entire film is when we're at the warehouse, or I guess the large boat, where he has all the money. He has the mob's money. He has all their money, and then you see Lau on top of the money, on top of this huge pile of cash. You see Lau all tied up, and rather than keeping half the money like he promised to do, he just burns it all. And then the Russian mobster is just shocked. He just can't believe that the Joker would do something like that. And it's just a great performance and a great line of dialogue when the Joker says, "All you care about is money. This town needs a new class of criminal." Something like that. And yeah, that was such a great performance. Amazing photography. The scene's beautiful with the flames in the background and the Joker just being menacing towards the Russian mobster. I loved it. Now, presumably, I think Lau gets burnt alive right there on top of that pile of money because he just douses the large pile of cash with gasoline and then throws his cigar, lights it up, and Lau was sitting on top of all that cash, so I presume he just got cooked alive or something. Now I'm not sure he had duct tape over his mouth or something, but I think we could have used a little bit of ADR of Lau screaming or something. But whatever. I'm not. I guess that's a nitpick. That's not such a big deal, but I'm just saying. Regardless, that was a great scene. And after this sequence, we come to this plot point where one of Bruce Wayne's employees essentially finds out that he is Batman by investigating, I guess you want to say, the department that's involved in technical innovation, something like that. And he finds out that the Batmobile was basically created by Wayne Enterprises, and he's able to put two and two together. Initially, he tries to blackmail Bruce Wayne into giving him millions of dollars, and Lucius Fox basically discourages him by in doing so because of the absurdity of all. In other words, he's like, "How are you gonna blackmail Bruce Wayne when the guy is one of the most richest people in the world, and you think he's Batman? You honestly think he's gonna let you go through with that?" So the threat is, man, if you threaten Bruce Wayne and he's Batman, he's going to take you out before you have any kind of chance to reveal that information to the public. But as the film progresses and the heat cranks up, he threatens to go to the press to reveal who Batman is. And then the Joker doesn't want the big surprise spoiled, so he says, whoever can kill this dude within the hour will succeed in preventing me from exploding a hospital, blowing up a hospital. So this causes more chaos in Gotham. And again, here's the theme of escalation reprising itself because now this terrorist threat just causes more chaos and pandemonium. And this brings us to this really hilarious and well acted scene where we finally get a sequence between the Joker and Two Face. This was such a well acted scene between Heath Ledger and Aaron Eckhart. In regards to acting, it's probably my second favorite, or tied at least with the interrogation scene between Batman and Joker. Such an outstanding performance. This is epic stuff we're witnessing right here. This is pure magic, this sequence. And the dialogue is humorous, and at the same time, it's chilling and disturbing. And really, what this scene does is that it basically introduces the concept of chaos to Two Face. It drives him insane. I guess you want to say the Joker introduces the concept of chaos to Two Face. And then as Two Face is going through all this trauma and he's going through this tragedy, he decides to embrace it. That's what this scene is about. It's about the Joker introducing the idea of chaos to Two Face, and Two Face fully embracing it, fully embracing this dual identity as Two Face as a result of all this trauma and losing Rachel and having his face being mutilated. Great stuff right here. Now, ultimately, what happens that an employee of Bruce Wayne is not able to reveal to the world that Batman is Bruce Wayne, and because he has to evacuate the premises of the news channel that he was going to divulge that information to, and ultimately what happens is Bruce Wayne ends up saving this guy's life. So he ends up saving the guy that was going to essentially rat him out as Batman. And also, Gotham General gets blown up, but it's presumed that no civilians were harmed. They were able to evacuate the building in time. Now, this leads us to Two Face, who is now on a mission for revenge and he's embracing chaos. And now he's going around trying to find out who assisted the Joker in the Gotham Police Department in killing Rachel, or rather, kidnapping Rachel. All the police officers that were involved said they didn't know he was going to kill him, that the Joker wasn't going to kill him. Two-Face doesn't believe them, and he's flipping a coin and basically deciding the outcome of their life. And ultimately, he ends up killing numerous police officers and other people as well. So now Harvey Dent really is no more, and Two-Face is here to stay, the murderer. After this, the Joker reveals a new plot, a new scheme, and he basically, again, causes chaos in Gotham. First, he makes an ambiguous threat, and it's unclear where the threat is going to emerge until he reveals that he placed one bomb on a civilian boat and another bomb on a boat full of the prisoners that basically Harvey Dent was able to acquire. So these are all the people that were arrested as a result of the RICO statutes in an attempt to prosecute the Gotham City's mobsters or something like that. And now those individuals, the criminals and the innocent people, the innocent civilians, have to choose who is going to live. So they have the detonator to the opposite boat. So the civilians have the detonator to the boat with the criminals, and the criminals have the detonator to the boat with the civilians. And I thought this was a real remarkable idea, because the point was to show the Joker that not everybody is as morally corrupt as he is. And that's ultimately what happens when the criminals decide not to blow up the civilians and the civilians decide not to blow up the criminals. This was brilliant. And even though this film is flawed and there are some things in this film that I feel like could have been done better, things like this really take the film into that awesome territory, that territory of you're seeing something special, in other words. And I love how this plot point really shows that morality is not as clear cut as some would think. And even to somebody like the Joker, who is completely depraved and who thinks that everybody is easily corrupted or able to be corrupted. And he was successful in being able to corrupt Harvey Dent, but he failed in corrupting Gotham in general, the citizens of Gotham, even the criminals of Gotham. He failed because he thought everybody was as depraved as him. And this also illustrates that even though there are some who deserve to die that live, and some who deserve to live that died, it's not always easy to dish out execution, to decide who will live and who will die. Even if you intellectually know right and wrong in your own mind, you have your own moral code. Just because you have your own moral code and you could be entirely filled with conviction in regards to that moral code, it doesn't make it easy to decide who's going to live and who's going to die. And even later in the film, Two-Face says something like that. He says, "Why was I the only one to lose everything?" And he kind of alludes that people that deserve to live died, and those that should have died got to live. Now, this is completely unrelated, but it reminds me of a quote from The Lord of the Rings. It was in the films and in the books as well. But it goes along the lines of something like, men who deserve to die live, and men who deserve to live die. And Gandalf tells Frodo that it's not easy to dish out death and execution. And they're talking about Smeagol, because initially Frodo was like, ah, man, I wish Bilbo had killed him. And then Gandalf tells him to be merciful, or he introduces that notion of mercy, and he introduces that idea that it's not easy to dish out death, to kill somebody, even if they deserve it. And I know it's completely unrelated, but the theme is the same, in my opinion. And I love how this film was able to execute this, because this is brilliant stuff. It's food for thought, and that's why I really, really, really enjoy this film. And I love how the Joker was proven wrong by Gotham, by the city of Gotham. It wasn't even necessarily Batman that defeated him, it was Gotham that defeated the Joker. And even though you have this nice action sequence in this abandoned building, where the Joker was clever as hell, he basically dressed up the hostages as the criminals and the criminals as the hostages. That was a cool action sequences. We even got to see the Joker get a little physical with Batman. Now compare that to Jack Nicholson, who couldn't even stand a chance as far as a physical fight against Batman in Batman 1989. I mean, Heath Ledger kind of held his own. He's kind of a psychopathic madman when it comes to fighting, and I really like that. But all this action stuff aside, what really defeated the Joker was the citizens of Gotham, and that's my point. And that last scene where the Joker's hanging upside down and he finally reveals to Batman that his final move, his ace up his sleeve, is what he did to Harvey Dent. That when the citizens of Gotham see what happened to Harvey Dent, their hope will break. Their hope in basically that beacon of light, that basically things can be done with virtue, will basically just fall apart. And I love that. I really love that, because that shows how clever the Joker is in this film. It shows how much Heath Ledger's interpretation of the Joker was ultimately a criminal mastermind. And all I have to say is bravo to that. Now, this brings us to the final scene in the film, a very powerful scene, and it's an emotional climax. It's a very traumatic emotional climax at that. So rather than having this epic action, spectacular showdown action piece, what we get, what Christopher Nolan decides to give us, is an emotional climax. And I thought this was brilliant because, again, it resonates deeper with the audience and it gives you food for thought. When you're done watching this movie, you're thinking about it because it brings up that moral ambiguity again, that grayness, and I love it. And basically, Harvey Dent has abducted Commissioner Gordon's family, his wife, and his two children, and he's threatening to kill them because he believes that Gordon was one of the individuals responsible for Rachel's death. And he wants essentially Gordon to feel what he felt. He wants Gordon to know what it feels like to lose somebody that he loves. And I love how Two Face tells Batman when he shows up that you thought that we could be decent men in an indecent time. And this ties back to basically, I guess you want to say, the thesis of this film, that central line, which is you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And all this dialogue is just great. And then Two Face goes on to say that the world is cruel, we were wrong, the only morality in a cruel world is chance. And then Two Face goes on telling Batman, why was it me who lost everything? To which Batman responds, it wasn't. And all this stuff is just very powerful stuff. I'm emotionally invested when I'm seeing this stuff. And then when Two Face asks him, why did the Joker choose to basically do these terrible things to him? Batman tells him because he was the best of them. He was the one, he was the hope. And the Joker knew. that he could basically turn someone like him from good to bad, to which Two-Face ultimately just says he was right. And that gets me every time. That's just so powerful when he says and he was right. Oh man. And before Two-Face is able to kill Jim Gordon's son, Batman intervenes. He's able to basically push him off the balcony or the building, whatever, and Two-Face falls to his death. Now, yes, I feel that this death could have been executed better, but like I said, it was an emotional climax. Yes, I think there could have been a scene where basically, I guess we could see Two Face fall to the ground and snap his neck or something, and it did feel a little anticlimactic as far as action goes, but again, it was an emotional climax. This ending was about emotion. It wasn't about an action sequence. And I even thought about how earlier on in the film, when Batman is threatening the mob boss Maroni, and he's holding him up, I guess you want to say three stories higher, 3 floors high, and even Maroni says, "You can let me go, and the fall won't kill me." And then Batman says, "I'm counting on it," or something like that. And he lets him go. And then Maroni like breaks his legs or something like that. And the drop is almost the same here. So you could even argue that that fall wouldn't even have killed Two Face. And again, it does feel anticlimactic as far as action goes. But I am arguing that it doesn't really matter because we had some real heavy emotional stuff right here to think about. The way Harvey Dent dies is kind of irrelevant at this point because there's nothing that could have been done as far as action wise that would have surpassed that climax, that emotional climax that was just given to us through this exchange of dialogue between Two Face, Gordon, and Batman. So ultimately, what happens is since Two Face is dead now, and since Harvey Dent became Two Face and did these terrible things, rather than be honest with the city of Gotham, Gordon and Batman decide to lie, to basically continue the front that Harvey Dent was a good person, that he was a light of hope for Gotham, so that Gotham doesn't fall apart, to keep that ray of hope alive. And as a result of this, Batman is going to have to pretend that he was the one responsible for all the deaths and murders of the police. And essentially, all the murders that Harvey Dent committed, Batman is going to have to take responsibility for. And as a result of that, he is going to be hunted. And that's how this film ends. And I remember when I initially first saw this film, I was kind of conflicted about that. I didn't know whether I liked that or not. I was kind of like, oh, so what? They're going to lie to Gotham? And that makes things okay? They lied? But there is going to be some ramifications for this lie that pops up in the next film, The Dark Knight Rises. And I was pleased to see that. And again, all this stuff lying to the citizens of Gotham in order to keep hope alive, again, it's that theme of moral ambiguity. And that's why this film is brilliant and why I highly recommend it. And even though there are some flaws to this film is essential. It's an A minus for me. And that wraps up my review and in depth analysis for The Dark Knight. Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share. One love, and last but not least, take care, people.